You said yes again. You knew you didn't want to. You felt it. That tight knot in your chest the moment the request landed. But the word no never made it out. Instead, you smiled. You agreed. And now you're lying awake at 1 a.m., exhausted, overcommitted, quietly furious at yourself. This isn't a willpower problem. This isn't a weakness. What's happening inside you is far more complicated and far more human than most people realize. Because the inability to say no isn't random. It has a name, it has roots, and once you understand the psychology behind it, something shifts permanently. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear might be the most honest thing anyone has ever said to you about why you keep saying yes when everything inside you is screaming otherwise. Imagine a child who learns very early on that love is conditional. Not through a lecture, not through punishment, through something far subtler, through the faces people made, through the silence that followed, through the way warmth disappeared the moment they pushed back. That child grows up believing, at a bone-deep level, that their value depends on how useful they are to others, that approval must be earned, that saying no risks everything. That child might be sitting inside you right now. Psychologists call this the fawn response, a trauma-based survival mechanism where a person reflexively placates others to avoid conflict or rejection. It sits alongside fight, flight, and freeze as a core stress response, and for millions of people, it became the default setting. It's not about being a pushover, it's about survival, about the story your nervous system wrote before you were old enough to edit it. Here's what nobody talks about. People pleasers are often the most perceptive people in the room. They scan faces, they read energy shifts, they catch the micro-expression of disappointment before it forms a word. This hypervigilance isn't a gift, it's an armor that was forged in a place where missing social cues had real consequences. And because they're so attuned to others, they give, constantly, without being asked. They preemptively help, preemptively agree, preemptively make themselves smaller so that no one ever has a reason to be upset with them. The tragic irony is all that giving rarely feels generous. It feels like ransom, like the price of staying safe. Dr. Harriet Bracker, in her landmark work on approval addiction, described this as a compulsive need to be liked that overrides personal judgment, physical health, and authentic desire. Not once, not occasionally, every single day. That's not a personality trait. That's a weight you've been carrying that was never yours to carry. Here's where it gets fascinating. When a people pleaser is asked to do something they don't want to, their brain lights up with threat signals. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, fires as if they're in genuine danger. Saying no doesn't just feel uncomfortable. Neurologically, it can feel like a threat to survival. At the same time, dopamine, the reward chemical, surges when they receive approval, when someone smiles after they say yes, when someone thanks them. The relief of avoiding conflict delivers a neurochemical hit that reinforces the behavior. It becomes a loop, a chemical loop, and like any loop built on reward and relief, it becomes extraordinarily hard to break. This is also why people pleasers often feel an inexplicable guilt when they do manage to say no, even when the refusal is completely reasonable. The nervous system, wired over years, interprets the act of self-assertion as something dangerous, as something that needs to be corrected. You're not broken. Your brain learned what it needed to learn to keep you safe. It just hasn't been updated yet. Let's talk about what this actually costs. Not in a dramatic, extreme way, in the quiet, grinding, day-by-day way. It costs you your time, the hours you spend on tasks you resented from the moment they were asked of you. It costs you your energy, the invisible tax of suppressing authentic emotion while performing enthusiasm you don't feel. It costs you your voice, the opinion never shared, the preference never stated, the need never named. And it costs you your relationships, not immediately, gradually. Because people who never say no build relationships built on a version of themselves that doesn't fully exist, and deep down, they know it. They feel the loneliness of being needed, but never truly known. Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that chronic self-silencing, consistently suppressing your authentic response to maintain harmony, is strongly linked to depression, anxiety, and physical illness. The body keeps the score, as they say. Your body is keeping the score right now, and it's been trying to tell you something for a long time. So what changes this? Not willpower. Willpower is the wrong tool for a psychological wound. You can't muscle your way out of a pattern that lives in your nervous system. What actually works is something called earned security, gradually teaching your brain through repeated small acts of self-assertion that the world doesn't end when you hold your ground. Start smaller than you think. Not, "No, I won't do that massive favor." Start with, "I need a few minutes before I respond." Start with, "That doesn't work for me today." Start with choosing what you want for dinner instead of immediately deferring. These aren't trivial acts. Each one is a message sent to a nervous system that has spent years operating in survival mode. Each one says, "We are safe, we can choose, our preferences matter." Therapy, specifically approaches like internal family systems and EMDR, can be profoundly effective for people whose people-pleasing is rooted in early trauma. But even without formal support, awareness is the first act of liberation. You cannot change a pattern you cannot see. Now, you're beginning to see it. Here's the deepest layer of all. Many people who can't say no have built their entire identity around being helpful, being dependable, being the one who shows up every time for everyone. And that identity isn't wrong. The generosity is real, the care is genuine. But when the giving comes from fear rather than fullness, it hollows you out over time. The shift isn't from being selfless to becoming selfish, it's far more subtle. It's learning the difference between giving because you want to and giving because you're terrified of what happens if you don't. The former fills you, the latter drains you until there's nothing left to give. Psychologist Brené Brown calls this the difference between boundaries and walls. Walls keep everyone out. Boundaries let the right things in. People who can't say no don't have walls. They have no fence at all. And a yard with no fence isn't welcoming. It's just unprotected. Learning to say no isn't an act of rejection. It's an act of respect for yourself and ultimately for the people who deserve to receive from you when you're genuinely whole. If something in this video landed differently than you expected, if you felt seen in a way you didn't anticipate, that's worth paying attention to. Awareness doesn't fix everything overnight, but it changes your relationship to the pattern, and that changed relationship is where everything starts. You are not obligated to exhaust yourself to be worthy of love. You never were. If this spoke to something real in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper into the psychology of behavior, identity, and hidden emotional patterns, you know where to find us. Take care of yourself. You've earned it.